There's a specific feeling you get when you walk into a historic home and you see it. The globs, the drips, the thick, suffocating layers of Landlord White latex paint smothering what you can clearly see as an intricate hand-carved staircase. It's a feeling of frustration, maybe even a little bit of anger. You look at the sheer craftsmanship hidden beneath that cheap polymer coating and you ask yourself the same question every preservationist has asked for the last 50 years. Why would anyone do this? Hi everyone, Ken here. Hit that subscribe button and let's dive into a special episode of This House. Prior to World War I, American homes were built using old-growth lumber. These were trees that grew in dense virgin forest. They fought for sunlight, they grew slowly, painfully slowly. If you look at a cross-section of a pine board from 1880 and compare it to a pine board from today, the difference is visible to the naked eye. Modern lumber is farmed. It is grown fast in open plantations, engineered to shoot up as quickly as possible so it can be harvested. The growth rings are wide and spaced out. It is soft, it is full of moisture, but old-growth wood? The rings are tight, packed together like pages in a book. Because that tree might have taken 300 years to mature, this created wood that was incredibly dense. It was naturally resistant to rot, it was resistant to termites, and it was hard. When you walk into a Gilded Age mansion or a turn-of-the-century row house, you might see American chestnut. This is a species that was once so common, they said a squirrel could travel from Maine to Georgia without ever touching the ground. It was the redwood of the East Coast, but a blight in the early 20th century wiped it out. It is effectively extinct. If you have unpainted American chestnut woodwork in your house, you are the custodian of a ghost species. You might see quarter-sawn white oak cut specifically to reveal those tiger-striped flakes that shimmer when the light hits them. This wasn't just lumber, it was art. So when a flipper comes in or a well-meaning homeowner decides they want to brighten up the place, they roll a coat of primer over the extinct American chestnut. They aren't just changing a color, they are erasing a natural history record. They are taking a material that is literally priceless because it cannot be bought anymore and turning it into a generic surface. So if the wood was so magnificent, why did it fall out of fashion? To understand that, we have to look at the psychology of the Victorian era. In the late 19th century, the arts and crafts movement and the aesthetic movement were in full swing. Think of critics like John Ruskin and designers like William Morris. They preached a philosophy of moral architecture. They believed that materials should be honest, stone should look like stone, brick should look like brick, and wood, well, it should look like wood. Faking a material, like painting pine to look like marble, was considered a lie. It was actually considered morally corrupt. Furthermore, consider the lighting. In 1885, your home was lit by gas. Gas lamps throw a flickering, warm, relatively dim light. It is a living flame. Rich dark woods, mahogany, walnut, fumed oak glow beautifully under gaslight. The darkness of the wood absorbed the soot from the gas and the coal fires. It felt cozy, it felt secure. It was a fortress against the cold, industrializing world outside. But then the light changed. As we cross into the 20th century, two things happened that spelled the doom of unpainted wood. First, the light bulb. Suddenly, homes were flooded with harsh electric light. Under the glare of early tungsten bulbs, those cozy dark Victorian parlors didn't look romantic anymore. They looked gloomy, they looked heavy. Every scratch, every bit of dust, and every dark corner was suddenly visible. But the second factor was much more powerful: germs. The early 20th century saw the discovery of the germ theory of disease. People began to understand that invisible microbes were killing them. Then came the Spanish flu of 1918. Suddenly, the Victorian home, with its heavy velvet drapes, its thick wool carpets, and its dark carved woodwork full of nooks and crannies, was seen as a health hazard. It was a dust trap, and dust equaled death. A new movement took over architecture, the sanitary movement. The ideal home was no longer a cozy castle. The ideal home was a hospital. Architects and designers began pushing for surfaces that were smooth, surfaces that were non-porous, and most importantly, surfaces that were white. If a surface was white, you could see the dirt. If you could see the dirt, you could kill the germs. The kitchen became a laboratory, the bathroom became a sterilization chamber, and the woodwork, well, that dark textured oak was just a place for bacteria to hide, so out came the white enamel. In the 1920s, painting your woodwork wasn't seen as destroying history, it was seen as an act of hygiene. It was a way to show your neighbors that you were a modern, clean, scientific family. They were literally whitewashing design. At the same time, America was having an identity crisis. After the chaos of World War I, Americans felt a deep nostalgia for the good old days of the Founding Fathers. This spurred the Colonial revival. Everyone wanted a house that looked like George Washington might have slept there. But here's where the confusion starts. In the 1700s, the Georgian and Federal eras, woodwork was often painted. In this time period, they didn't have the machinery to easily strip and varnish wood, and they often used cheaper woods like pine for the trim, which was meant to be painted over to protect it. So in the 1920s and 1930s, when people wanted that colonial look, they took their stunning 1890s Victorian staircases and they painted them white. They were trying to force a Victorian house to play dress up as a Georgian farmhouse. It was a clash of styles, but it stuck. For the vast majority of the 20th century, painted trim became the default. By the time we hit the mid-century and the era of the landlord special, painted woodwork became a matter of economics. It is much, much cheaper to hire a painter to spray everything white than it is to hire a craftsman to clean, sand, stain, and varnish wood. Paint hides sin, paint hides water damage, paint hides the fact that you use cheap, finger-pointed pine instead of solid oak. We effectively became a culture of paint grade expectations. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Okay, I get it. Painting it was bad, I'll just strip it. And here lies the second tragedy. Painting woodwork is a 30-minute job. Unpainting woodwork is a lifetime sentence. Wood is porous, it's like a sponge. When that oil-based paint was applied in 1925, it soaked into the grain, it bonded with the fibers, and to get it out, you were looking at harsh chemicals, dangerous heat guns, and picking paint out of intricate crevices with a dental pick, inch by inch. And we have to talk about the elephant in the room, lead. Almost all paint used on woodwork before 1978 contains lead. When you start sanding that, you are creating a toxic dust that is incredibly dangerous, especially to children. This is why so many beautiful staircases stay painted, not because the owner doesn't love wood, but because the cost and the potential danger of restoration is simply too high. Once the paint is on, the wood is effectively held hostage. Now before the purists come after me, we have to admit that paint isn't always evil. As we mentioned, if you have a house from say the 1840s, a Greek Revival, or a Federal-style home, your trim was likely painted from day one. And even in the height of the Victorian era, there was a hierarchy of wood. The public rooms, i.e. the parlor, the dining room, and the main hall, these were the show-off rooms. These got the oak, the walnut, the cherry. These were almost always stained and varnished. But go up the back stairs, go into the servants' quarters, check the pantry, or the third-floor nursery. In these spaces, the Victorians often used paint-grade wood. Think soft pine or poplar, wood that dings easily and doesn't have a pretty grain. These areas were often painted originally, so if you live in a historic home and you are agonizing over whether to strip the paint in the back bedroom, you might be trying to restore something that never existed. Best practice is to use a razor blade. Find an inconspicuous spot, scrape back a tiny layer. If you see a layer of amber, flaky stuff right on the wood, that is shellac. Shellac means it was originally clear-coated. If you scrape down to the wood and the very first layer is creamy lead paint, congratulations, you can keep it painted. But let's be real, most of the time we have this conversation, we are talking about the tragedy of the main hall. We are talking about the pocket doors that are glued shut with 50 layers of latex. We are talking about the fireplaces that look like they were dipped in liquid plastic. We live in an era of fast fashion and fast housing. We are used to things being disposable, but a historic house is not disposable. It was built with materials that have been exhausted. It was built with skills we have largely forgotten. When you own a house like this, you are the caretaker. You are the temporary guardian of a structure that was here before you and hopefully will be here after you. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. What are your thoughts on painted woodwork? Let me know down below in the comments section. My goal for this year is to reach 1 million subscribers, so if you are among the 1 to 2 million monthly viewers of this channel who are not subscribed, hit that subscribe button and let's reach this goal together. As always, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time on This House.